Ladies and gentlemen, here is a calm, spiritually grounded introduction to your motivational speech in the style of Shi Heng Yi. Based on your title, God spoke it clearly. Chosen ones, this is your month of public vindication. There are moments in life when silence carries a louder truth than all the noise that surrounds us, and in that silence, the voice of God becomes unmistakably clear, not through chaos, not through confusion, but through certainty, through stillness, through divine timing. This is not a month like the others. This is a marked season, a spiritual turning point. God has spoken, not with whispers, but with clarity, and His message is not vague, it is precise. This is your month of public vindication. For the ones who have been hidden, overlooked, rejected, betrayed, for the ones who chose obedience over popularity, discipline over distraction, and purpose over pressure, this word is for you. Heaven is shifting something in your favor. What was once delayed is now being released. What was stolen will be returned, not in secret, but in the open, before eyes that once doubted you, before voices that once mocked you. God is preparing a table not just for your peace, but for your proof. You have walked through seasons of silent suffering. You have endured injustice without explanation. But now, the weight of your preparation meets the wind of divine recognition. You do not need to fight for visibility when God Himself declares, "Now I will make it known." Let us step into this revelation together, with calm, with trust, and with reverence, because when God speaks with such clarity, it is not merely to inspire, it is to fulfill, and what He begins, He finishes. When God speaks, He does not stutter. He does not whisper in riddles. He does not leave His chosen ones wandering in confusion when it is time for clarity. There is a distinct sound in the Spirit that pierces through noise, doubt, and hesitation. It is a voice that is not born of the earth, but of the eternal, and when it moves, it cuts through the fog of uncertainty and delivers a word that cannot be denied. Divine clarity is not loud, yet it carries more weight than thunder. It is subtle, but when it comes, you know in your soul, you know in your bones, you know in the stillness of the night, when everything else is silent, but one thing remains, God's voice echoing, speaking, affirming, and confirming. Many have waited for signs in the sky, for external evidence, for people to agree, or for circumstances to align. But those are not the ways God confirms His will. When He wants His chosen ones to move, to shift, to awaken, He doesn't negotiate with your fears or try to convince your critics. He speaks directly, clearly, not to your ears but to your spirit, and that word becomes louder than every doubt you've carried. That word becomes like a flame within, igniting your strength again, reminding you of what you carry, of who you are, and of what heaven has decided concerning you. God does not operate in confusion. Confusion belongs to the realm of the enemy, where deception clouds the mind and delays purpose, but clarity, true divine clarity, breaks confusion like light breaks darkness. It ends cycles. It resets seasons. It separates what is sent from God and what is sent to distract. This clarity comes when your heart is still, when your spirit has been made quiet through trials, humility, and surrender. It is not revealed to the noisy or the restless. It is given to those who have been emptied of pride, of ambition, of the need to be understood by others. Only then does the voice of God become unmistakable. The world may still be in chaos, but to the chosen ones, a different atmosphere begins to settle in. You feel it before you see it. You sense it before anything changes. That word, that moment of divine communication, becomes a turning point. You don't have to run anymore. You don't have to beg for signs. God has spoken it clearly, and that is enough. He speaks in seasons, and when a season of public vindication arrives, His chosen people feel it in their spirit first. The clarity comes not as a prediction, but as a present confirmation. It is the difference between hoping for a breakthrough and knowing it's already begun. This is the month where many will hear clearly for the first time in a long while. This is the moment where divine instruction will override emotional confusion. This is when God will say, "Enough delay, enough hiding, enough injustice. Now I reveal what I've been preparing." And you will not have to ask anyone for permission to believe it. You will not need validation from others to obey it, because clarity from God silences every other voice. The pain you endured may have clouded your discernment. The battles you fought may have made you question your direction. But even in the midst of pressure, when God speaks clearly, all of that fades. The fog lifts, the burden lightens, the decision becomes obvious. It won't be forced, it won't be manipulated, it will just be. That's how divine clarity works. It carries no confusion, no second guessing, no doubt. It simply exists in truth, and once it arrives, you wonder how you ever missed it before. You realize God had been speaking all along, but now the time has come to hear it with fresh ears and a ready heart. There is no striving in this clarity, no performing, no proving. There is only alignment. Your spirit finally lines up with what heaven has already decreed. The distractions begin to fall away. The people who do not belong in this next season start to fade into the background. The noise of critics, the wounds of betrayal, the shame of failure, all become irrelevant in the light of what God has said, because what He speaks, He backs, and when He says this is your time of public vindication, He is not offering encouragement. He is announcing fulfillment. There is a sacred mystery hidden in the waiting seasons, in the moments when you feel unseen, overlooked, or even forgotten. Something deeper is being formed within you. It's not just delay, it's divine preparation. God does not hide His chosen ones to punish them. He hides them to prepare them. He conceals them from the noise, the comparison, the premature spotlight, so He can work in them what cannot be rushed. When the world doesn't see you, it's easy to think you're not progressing, but in the kingdom of God, hiddenness is a sacred process. It is in that invisible place where your roots grow deep, where your motives are purified, where your spirit is strengthened beyond what eyes can measure. During that hidden season, God teaches you how to walk without applause, how to stand without support, how to believe without evidence. It's in those quiet corridors where you learn the true language of faith, not based on results, but on relationship. He begins to strip away your dependence on outcomes and builds in you a trust that isn't shaken by silence. You learn to obey even when it costs you. You learn to stay still even when everything in you wants to move. You learn to choose integrity over opportunity and alignment over ambition. These lessons cannot be taught on platforms or in crowds. They can only be absorbed in the solitude of being hidden. Many of God's greatest vessels went through extended periods of obscurity. Before David ruled, he was tending sheep in forgotten fields. Before Joseph was elevated, he was rejected by family, thrown into a pit, and locked in a prison. Before Moses led a nation, he lived in the wilderness, far from influence or recognition. These weren't detours. They were designed by heaven. Each hidden moment served a purpose. Each delay was a classroom. Each rejection carved a deeper well of humility and discernment. This is the pattern of divine preparation. The world may call it a setback, but in the spirit it's a setup. The quiet years are where your character is tested and your calling is refined. In that space of silence, God removes your attachment to validation. He teaches you how to hear His voice above your own emotions. He tests your stewardship with little before entrusting you with much. You begin to see that what matters most is not being seen, but being ready. And readiness is not determined by how eager you are, it's proven by how submitted you are. When no one is watching, do you still pray? When no one is applauding, do you still show up with excellence? When no doors are opening, do you still believe God is good? These are the questions answered in the hidden place. And though it feels like nothing is happening externally, internally, everything is changing. God is aligning your heart, detoxing your mind, healing your wounds, and sharpening your focus. He's removing the fear of man and replacing it with the fear of the Lord. He's separating you from old patterns, old relationships, and old identities that no longer serve where you're going. This is not a passive wait. This is a divine construction site. Every delay is building you. Every rejection is refining you. Every silent season is anchoring you. What people can't see is the version of you God has been shaping when the lights were off. What they didn't notice is how your prayers deepened, how your faith matured, how your discernment sharpened, how your heart softened. That is the real work, the kind that produces longevity, not just visibility. So when the moment of public vindication arrives, it will not be because you pushed for attention. It will be because heaven decided you were ready, and not just ready to be seen, but ready to carry what visibility demands. Because exposure without preparation is dangerous, but exposure after divine hiddenness, that's when your elevation becomes sustainable, because it's built on something real. God never wastes a hidden season. He allows it to train your hands for battle and your heart for obedience. It is not a detour, it's a forge. The fire may be invisible, but it's refining you. The isolation may be painful, but it's purposeful. The silence may be uncomfortable, but it's sacred. This is where the chosen are transformed before they are revealed. This is where crowns are formed in secret before they are placed in public. This is where vindication begins long before it becomes visible. Vindication is not about revenge. It is not about proving your worth to those who doubted you. It is about heaven's justice, heaven's timing, and heaven's response to the quiet obedience of a chosen one. There are times when you have done everything right, loved without return, served without recognition, obeyed without applause, and still life felt like it rewarded others while bypassing you. But in the realm of the Spirit, there is no such thing as unnoticed obedience. Every sacrifice you made in silence was seen. Every time you chose humility over pride, peace over retaliation, discipline over distraction, God was watching and God was recording. Nothing done in faith, no matter how small, escapes His eye. And when the fullness of time comes, vindication is released not as an apology from people, but as a response from heaven. Heaven's response is unlike anything the world can give. It comes without manipulation. It comes without effort. It comes without the need to announce yourself. God has a way of exalting His chosen ones in such a manner that even your enemies are forced to witness it, not for you to boast, but for them to see the difference between being self-appointed and divinely anointed. Vindication is God's way of saying, I saw it all, and now I will answer on your behalf. You do not need to campaign for it. You do not need to convince anyone of your calling. Vindication does not ask for approval. It declares what has already been decided in the courts of heaven. There are times when you are misunderstood, misjudged, even mistreated, not because you were wrong, but because your purity threatened the environment. When your presence carries light, it exposes shadows around you, and not everyone celebrates light. Some retreat from it, others attack it. But your refusal to retaliate, your refusal to lower your standards just to be accepted, becomes the very evidence God uses later to elevate you. Every time you remained silent when you could have spoken, every time you walked away instead of engaging in petty battles, every time you chose to bless instead of curse, those moments were not in vain. They were spiritual seeds sown in heaven's soil, and now those seeds are beginning to bear fruit. Vindication is never rushed. It doesn't arrive according to your frustration. It arrives according to divine alignment. Sometimes the longer the delay, the greater the impact. God waits until every piece is in position, every voice has spoken, every opinion has settled, and then He moves, and when He moves there is no debate. There is no confusion, The shift is undeniable, the elevation is irrefutable, the change is permanent. This is not about a spotlight. This is about a shift in the spirit where God vindicates you by bringing clarity where there was confusion, honor where there was shame, and favor where there was once resistance. When vindication comes, it will not just lift you. It will silence every voice that spoke falsely about you. Not because you asked for it, but because you endured quietly, because you trusted God's process over public validation, because you were more loyal to your assignment than your image. Heaven takes note of such rare obedience. And when the moment comes, the response is not subtle, it is visible, it is strategic, it is undeniable. The same mouths that gossiped will have to testify. The same eyes that rolled will have to watch. Not because you fought for it, but because you waited for it. There is a shift that happens when God says now. It is not triggered by your timeline, but by your transformation. Once your heart is ready and your character is rooted, vindication is released like a flood. It begins to touch every area where injustice once reigned. It restores what was lost, it redeems what was broken, and it rewards what was faithfully endured. There is nothing passive about divine vindication. It is intentional, it is holy, it is fierce. It is heaven's righteous response to the quiet faith of the chosen, when you didn't quit, when you didn't compromise, when you didn't bend under pressure. Heaven remembers and heaven responds. When God chooses to prepare a table for you, he does not do it in secret. He sets it in the presence of those who once questioned your worth, doubted your calling, and underestimated your journey. There is something intentional about public vindication. It is not about ego. It is about divine justice being made visible. The same people who watched you go through pain without helping, who witnessed your struggle without offering a hand, are the ones who will be present when God exalts you, not to embarrass them, but to demonstrate that his favor is not based on popularity, but on purpose. When God sets the table, it becomes clear who sent the invitation and who didn't need to RSVP. You don't have to announce your arrival. The table itself becomes the announcement. The visibility is not for show, it's for validation, not human validation, but divine affirmation. It is for people to see that God's timing is perfect, that obedience carries weight, and that endurance produces fruit. The same eyes that overlooked you are about to see you differently, not because you changed your appearance or chased their approval, but because God's light has begun to shine openly on what he once concealed. The unveiling is deliberate. God brings you out of hiding not because he needs to prove anything, but because the season has shifted. The wilderness has served its purpose, the isolation has produced its strength, and now the visibility is part of the vindication. The table isn't just a place of rest, it's a place of recognition. It's where your enemies are not destroyed but disarmed. They are made to witness, not from a distance, but from proximity. That's how God works. He brings resolution through revelation. When he lifts you, it's not to step on others. It's to demonstrate the power of perseverance. It's to show that even in your silent seasons, you were never alone. Even when you were dismissed, you were still developing. Even when you were mocked, you were still maturing. And now that the table has been set, the evidence speaks for itself. You don't have to explain how you got here. You don't have to justify your breakthrough. The results testify on your behalf. This is not just about personal elevation. It's about strategic positioning. God places you at the table for influence, for impact, and for divine assignments that could not be fulfilled in hiding. The table is not the end, it is a new beginning. It's where the lessons from your hidden season are activated, where the scars become symbols of your survival, where the oil of anointing flows not just on your head, but through your actions, your voice, your presence. You sit not in pride, but in purpose. And those watching, whether they understand it or not, are witnessing a moment that was written before time began. This kind of public setting is humbling because it reminds you of the journey. Every setback, every silent tear, every night you wanted to quit but didn't, it all comes rushing back, not to weaken you, but to center you. You realize you didn't get here by force, but by grace. You didn't open this door, it was opened for you. And the ones watching don't need to be convinced. They just need to observe, because what God does in public is meant to shift atmospheres. It's meant to break patterns. It's meant to redeem narratives. Those who thought they buried you will see they only planted you. Those who celebrated your delay will now witness your delivery. You are not at the table because of connections, influence, or human strategy. You're there because heaven ordained it. And when God places you somewhere, no one can remove you. The table becomes a symbol, not of status, but of survival. It reminds you that you didn't lose your mind in the waiting, that you didn't lose your integrity in the storm, and that you didn't lose your identity in the pressure. What once seemed like a delay has now become the very reason the moment feels so divine. Everything is aligned, the time is right, the atmosphere is ready, and those who are present are witnessing something they can't deny. There comes a time in the life of every chosen one when the need to defend oneself fades into silence. Not because there aren't attacks, not because the accusations have stopped, but because a deeper understanding has been reached, that God defends better than we ever could. The urge to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you becomes exhausting. The desire to clear your name in rooms you were never called to enter loses its grip. The chosen ones reach a place where they realize silence is not weakness, it is strategy, it is trust, it is alignment with a higher courtroom where truth needs no lawyer, only time. Many have been wounded trying to defend themselves against words they didn't speak, assumptions they didn't deserve, and judgments that had no foundation. But every time you try to fight those battles in your own strength, you step out of God's courtroom and into the realm of human opinion. In that space, justice is always distorted. In that space, no matter how pure your intentions are, they will always be filtered through someone else's lens of insecurity or fear. The more you try to explain, the more misunderstood you become. But when God says, "Be still," He is not just offering peace. He is declaring jurisdiction. He is taking over the case. The chosen ones are often misunderstood not because they are wrong, but because they operate at a different frequency. They move by faith when others require facts. They obey divine instructions that don't make sense to the logical mind. They walk away from opportunities that seem perfect on paper because their spirit is unsettled. And to those watching, it looks like failure, rebellion, or confusion. But in heaven's eyes, it's obedience. And obedience always looks strange until it produces fruit. In the meantime, the chosen must walk through shadows of suspicion, whispers of doubt, and seasons of silence, trusting that the one who sees all will speak when it matters most. The need to be understood is deeply human, but the call to be chosen often requires you to surrender that need. You will have to walk through seasons where you carry burdens you can't explain, follow instructions you can't justify, and endure attacks you can't respond to. But in that restraint, in that surrender, you unlock a greater authority. When you don't fight back in the flesh, heaven begins to fight for you in the spirit. When you choose peace over proving your point, you place yourself under divine protection that cannot be penetrated by gossip, slander, or manipulation. God's vindication often begins with your silence, not a silence of defeat, but of confidence, a silence that says, "I know who called me," a silence that says, "I don't need your approval to obey my assignment," a silence that says, "The truth will stand when everything else fades." This kind of posture is not natural. It is forged in the fire. It is built in moments when you wanted to scream your innocence but chose to weep in prayer instead. When you wanted to expose what was done to you but decided to let God be the revealer. When you wanted to defend your name but remembered that the same God who named you is the one who defends you. And when that divine moment of vindication comes, it carries a weight that no human argument can rival. God doesn't just clear your name, He elevates it. He doesn't just silence your critics, He renders them irrelevant. He doesn't just prove you right, He proves Himself faithful, and in doing so, He shows the world that the battle was never yours, it was always His. You are just the vessel, the testimony, the living proof that trust in God is not in vain. When He steps in, the tables turn without your hand lifting a finger. The narrative shifts without your voice speaking a word. The outcome changes without your effort forcing a result. There are moments in life when the spiritual climate around you changes so drastically that you can feel it in your bones before you see it with your eyes. A holy stirring, a divine disruption, a sacred shift begins to unfold, not because of anything you manipulated, but because heaven has declared that the appointed time has arrived. This kind of shift doesn't come with flashing lights or loud announcements. It begins in the quiet, in the spirit, in the still moments when something within you knows that the season has turned. The warfare feels different. The resistance begins to break. The atmosphere carries a weight that was not there before. This is how God moves when He is bringing His chosen ones into a season of public vindication. For so long, it felt like doors were sealed shut. Every effort led to delay. Every step met resistance. Every prayer seemed to echo back without response. But even in the delay, something was being built. In the silence, something was being refined. Now that refining has reached completion, and God begins to shift things on your behalf, not through force, but through favor. Not through striving, but through divine release. This is not a shift you earn through performance. This is a shift that is activated by obedience, endurance, and spiritual alignment. When you remain faithful in private, heaven prepares elevation in public. When you surrender the outcome, God orchestrates something you could never manufacture in your own strength. This month carries a different weight, not because the calendar changed, but because divine timing has aligned with divine justice. The things that once held you back can no longer hold you. The words spoken against you no longer carry authority. The systems that tried to box you in are now shaking. God does not announce breakthrough until the structure to hold it has been formed. And now the structure within you, your character, your discipline, your discernment, has been solidified. The delay wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And now the shift has begun. What once resisted you will start to yield. What once ignored you will start to notice. Not because you became louder, but because God's voice is now behind your presence. When heaven releases a shift, it doesn't just touch your circumstances. It touches everything connected to your purpose. Relationships begin to change. Conversations start to carry greater weight. New doors open without your knocking. Old ones close without your explanation. There is no need to force, to strive, to chase. The divine wind begins to blow, and all you are required to do is align with it. This is where acceleration happens, not by your pace, but by the Spirit of God moving ahead of you. This is when opportunities begin to find you. This is when the things you had to beg for in the past begin to seek you out. The shift also brings clarity. Clarity about who you are, where you are going, and who is called to walk with you. Some connections will fall away, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Some habits will lose their hold. Some distractions will lose their appeal. You no longer have time for what drains you. You no longer have space for what delays you. The urgency in your spirit begins to rise, not from anxiety, but from awareness. You sense that the window is open and the moment is sacred. This is not the time to hesitate. This is the time to step with intention, to walk in obedience, to move in rhythm with what heaven is doing. Everything begins to respond differently to you when God initiates a shift. The same people who dismissed you begin to make room for you. The same places that once rejected you begin to call for you, not because they changed, but because God shifted the weight of your presence. Your name begins to carry new authority. Your voice begins to carry new impact. Your walk begins to carry new confidence. And it's not pride, it's alignment. You are no longer trying to fit where you don't belong. You are no longer asking for permission to rise. The season has changed, and your spirit knows it. What used to be tolerated now becomes celebrated. What used to be overlooked now becomes honored. What used to be misunderstood now becomes undeniable. The shift has been set in motion, and nothing can stop what heaven has already released.